Hey guys, what's going on? Chris here with Shughead Gaming and another PSVR review. Released originally on Steam VR, Preta Vendetta Rising is inspired by games such as Dark Souls, Diablo, and Monster Hunter. It's designed to be a challenging hack and slash action RPG. While it promises to deliver on some lofty promises, does this very anticipated addition to the PSVR library deliver? Here's my review. Just a quick note guys, if you enjoy the video, throw it a like, and of course if you want to stay up to date on all PSVR game reviews, please hit that subscribe button. Your involvement makes a huge difference to a small channel and a niche interest group. And with that, graphics are up first. Preta Vendetta Rising's first impression is very positive. When I first spawned into the world, I was immediately reminded yet again how much of a difference VR can make on almost any genre. Heroes and monsters feel like massive playthings acting out in a personal fantasy sandbox for one. Character models are above average and rendered sharp and clean. Movement animation on your character, while not stellar, is also very acceptable and was not distracting. While the world is always at night or dusk, draw distance is decent with your immediate surroundings lit up by a light source that seems to emanate from your body. The world around you is simple yet fun to look around in. You'll find yourself looking over ledges to camps below 1 second, then the next mesmerized by the stars in the night sky. It's actually pretty good stuff. Special abilities light up the battlefield with bright animations that certainly feel very Diablo-esque, while campfires and portals can amaze with their brilliance when looking up close. Overall, texture detail on buildings are acceptable, but nowhere near, say, something like moss. It's not all good news though, and as I spent more time in the game, some of these issues started to show themselves more and more. It should be mentioned that I am on a Pro. As such, this game is listed as being Pro Enhanced. This is all the more relevant since throughout my playtime, and especially during the initial moments when loading into a level, the frame rates when moving my head would take a massive dive and stutter brutally. While unacceptable in any VR game, it's especially unwelcomed on a Pro Enhanced title. This usually would pass and didn't ruin the game for me, however, it would happen often enough to be jarring. Lighting in the worlds is acceptable, however, fairly limited in its detail. Shadows especially take a real hit and are a jagged mess if you look close enough. Another aspect that stands out is how empty the world feels. Base camp feels more like stalls at a market than a living, breathing town that's come alive. When out on missions, there's no real sign of life outside of the enemies that spawn in front of you. Areas of the level you can see in the distance are void of activity right up until you actually reach that area and they spawn in front of you. I understand the concessions required for VR, but because this game hits so many right notes when compared to its console competitors, it stands out when something's missing.
Great,
and that brings us to sounds.
Let me formally introduce myself. I am Captain Carl of Blackhand.
Voice acting is serviceable and doesn't overstay its welcome. Most NPCs will simply begin a conversation with recorded audio and then continue on in text, as is common classic RPG staple. Combat sounds are strong, as I found the weapon hits satisfying and visceral. When going into rage mode, the soundscape really helped to drive home my now Hulk-like abilities. The one sound aspect that was not done very well would be the more atmospheric sounds of the world around you. When on missions in the opening world, I was met with a repeating clanking sound. I believe it was meant to be the sound of mining, however, it was irritating as shit, and I found myself experiencing the limited use of 3D sound while I looked all around trying to track down the infernal noise. In other areas, the world sound was lacking, which further added to that empty feeling I described in the graphics section. Next up is gameplay and story. If someone asked me to describe this game in 2 words, it would be Diablo Light. Preta does a fairly serviceable job at bringing this genre to VR headsets. It never reaches the heights of any of the games the developers list as its influences, nor does it shit on them either. You have likely played this game dozens of times before. Meet a contact, go on a mission, and get your loot and resources. Come back to the village, meet another contact, and get another mission. Rinse, repeat, and so on and so forth as you open up the abilities to smith, trade, and craft. The game loop present is tried and true, and for good reason. It's addicting and fun. While not as deep as Diablo in any respect, it does hit all the same notes. Get better gear, push forward into new missions, and collect required resources or level up. I even felt a similarity to the Monster Hunter games, as smith items required certain resources and loot, while specifying what missions to obtain them in. This often required going back over previous missions, and hence the game loop. You choose one of three characters: Marcus the heavy class with his giant sword, Alicia the nimble warrior with her chain weapon, and finally Rena, the magic wielder of the three. Combat is simple in its execution, but reveals a slightly deeper nature as you learn to work within its confines. Movement consists of evade, attack, move, and turn, with the face buttons being used for three special abilities that recharge after each use. These are also different between the three characters. The abilities can also be leveled up with skill points. Finally, you have the ability to go into what the game calls Rage Mode, a very helpful mode when you're getting your ass kicked. Once your Rage meter is full, you can engage Rage Mode, which enables three different stronger abilities and greatly increases the overall damage output for a short time. Consumables are also present, which can be crafted in town and used on missions. Finally, there's a companion system in which you raise a minion to assist you on missions. While not particularly helpful, this is still a welcomed addition. Like I said, this game checks off all the boxes, and it works pretty well. Even if this game isn't as robust as its flat screen peers, my only real complaint is lack of a run function, as I felt very slow at times, and also I felt the need for a proper dodge move. I began to realize as I played more that these constraints were likely intended, however, it still irritated me. At this time, multiplayer is extremely limited and relegated to challenge mode. The developer has stated that a patch will implement co-op into the campaign, but this remains to be seen. This is extremely disappointing, as games such as these, especially with the grind, are much more fun with friends and could be a deal breaker for some. Finally, motion sickness shouldn't be much of a problem. I don't suffer from it, so it's hard for me to comment on this completely, but the player's characters move at a slower pace and movement of the camera is in your control. It should also be mentioned that you can also change camera angles to 3 separate distances in the third person view, and even change the camera to a first person view, kind of like Skyrim, if that's to your liking. I didn't find it suited this view very well, but I love it when devs give us choices in VR. And finally, this brings us to fun factor and my final verdict. As long as you have your expectations in check and you don't need multiplayer, there is a lot to like with Preta Vendetta Rising. While it may get a pass from PSVR players since it's really the only game of this particular genre, it is competent in its own right. It may be a bit rough in some spots and a little light in others, but there is a compelling game loop and satisfying, if not a bit simple, combat system. With a stated 50-hour gameplay length, I believe that much of this depends on your desire to grind and participate in the gameplay tropes of this genre. That being said, there's still a lot here, and at $20 American, it's priced pretty good. I'm gonna say, guys, this is a buy if you like the game. If this isn't usually your thing, then maybe wait for a sale and put in a few more laps of Wipeout instead. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching my review. This is Chris from Shughead Gaming, and you know the deal. Please hit that like button, subscribe if you want to see more reviews like this, and of course, share my reviews, please. I want to get the word out there. Thanks, guys, and I'll catch you on the next review.